Bounced around quite a bit through Denver, California, and then the Pac Northwest, Spokane, and eventually settling in Boise, Idaho. Raised four kids in Boise. Um, Wife and I met in college, and we were just feeling like we had this terrific normal path forward. Four kids with typical bumps along the way, but for the most part, all doing well, all grown. Three grandkids now, all living overseas, and life seemed pretty normal. Yes, I started after I went to law school and practiced for a few years. I started a business. We ran that for 20 years, eventually sold it to private equity right before COVID. Great time to sell a business. And with all the uncertainty that COVID brought, we all kind of bunkered in together, tried to figure out what was next and how fast this normal was going to return. And then, as luck would have it, all of our friends started down the path of finding their new normal, and my wife and I got diverted substantially. Storms hit our house. We got a phone call. It wasn't unexpected. It felt a little bit like it came out of left field, but at the same time, she had some initial contact with her healthcare providers, so it wasn't unexpected, but it certainly changed the path. So I went from being an entrepreneur, sitting on some boards, to being a primary caregiver. And what that meant, I had no idea, but I didn't have a choice. I didn't sign up for it. I didn't interview for it. It just came and landed on my lap. And that's really where this story began.
You mentioned that you and your spouse were together for so long, for a number of years. Looking back on that, how does it feel to say that we have been together this amount of time and we've created this family? What kind of emotions are you feeling when you share that?
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love it. 36 years together. Um, and again, four kids. When I got married, I announced to her I was going to go to law school. She supported that right away. It wasn't expected for her, but she supported it, jumped into not one, but two jobs and remodeled a house at the same time. And that type of energy and that type of partnership has permeated our every day ever since. So, when all of the new things happen, you have kids, you get a new job, you decide to change careers. In my case, you decide to leave a fantastic job at Albertsons as a litigation attorney, and you dive into owning your own business, which meant your paycheck went way backwards. All those moments in life when you make those decisions, you need support. And she was always there for me. So it was a fantastic partnership, still is.
You said 36 years you guys have been together.
36 years.
Congratulations. I
Thank you.
know for me, when I hear people even together 5 years, I'm celebratory just because many people think that it's a perfect 5 years, but you learn a lot about each other. You grow together and you make it work because this is the person that you love from day one all the way to day 10,000 and so on. You mentioned that she was supportive of you. Were you two like each other's superheroes at that point?
Absolutely. I mean, except for one instance, and I talk about this in the book that I wrote, but the only instance the way we weren't superhuman to each other and supportive and loving and caring was in the middle of the night when that baby cries. And that you hear the cry, it kind of picks up some steam, it picks up some energy. You kind of freeze. It's kind of a game. It's like who moves first, and you lay there, and eventually somebody has to step up and deal with the baby, and the other person rolls over and goes back to sleep. Those are the moments you're not as loving and caring. Those are the moments you get a little bitter and angry, and the next morning you think, what is the deal, and then the next night it starts all over again. So other than those moments, yeah, I mean, you certainly have your disagreements. You work through it, and you still love each other and support each other, and build a life together. Because that really is what it's about. It's about a partnership.
I share that with someone where you'll learn the most about each other in a relationship through conflict resolution. What you
Mhm.
can resolve together, you grow through together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beautiful thing about it because sometimes we forget how beautiful a relationship is because maybe online we only see the bad, but when you actually get someone that has 36 years, that has 40 years, I remember seeing some people, they're celebrating their 50th anniversary, and I'm like, wow, that is absolutely amazing. Imagine the stories that they can tell to their kids. Imagine the stories they can tell to their community. Imagine seeing them as they get older, growing together, and they still look at each other like they're in their 20s,
Yeah.
in their 30s. I think that is absolutely fantastic. When your wife then got the news, when you guys got the news that she had cancer, what were some of the emotions that you went through seeing that your superhero, your partner, is going through this?
It was interesting for sure. I mean, the phone rang and we were in the most comfortable, safe place in the world, our kitchen counter, a place you think that monsters can't come find you, but they sure did. So the phone call came, really started out with a lot of uncertainty because you always imagine. I mean, when you're sitting at night and you're thinking bad thoughts, as people do, because that's typically when they enter your mind. Um, you think about that moment. It's going to come for most people at some point in some fashion. Um, so when bad news is delivered, how do you react? In this case, there was tears for sure. There was fear, uncertainty, um, all of those elements. Um, I call it the gut punch. When the gut punch came, um, it wasn't about how you're going to react at that moment. It was about how you were going to change and evolve to meet the challenge. In our case, the phone call came, it was from a nurse. She identified the fact that Wendy now had breast cancer. So cancer has now entered our life. But the nurse didn't provide a lot of details. She didn't provide a lot of insights, what type of cancer, what the treatment path was going to be, what this was going to mean for us from a day-to-day perspective. Was it radiation? Was it chemotherapy? We just had no information. And the one thing that nurse said on that Friday afternoon, she said, don't take the temptation. Don't run down the rabbit hole of the internet. Don't start researching about a bunch of things. Just take a moment. So we did. We took a very quiet, long weekend together, cried a lot, stared at each other a lot. TVs ran unwatched just for background noise. We didn't talk a lot. The one decision we did make together was not to let anybody know yet. Because what were we going to tell them? We got the gut punch and we knew this was going to change our normal, but we didn't know what that meant yet. We didn't know what the schedule was, the treatment was, the outlook looked like. We knew nothing other than we had cancer. And so we sat together all weekend waiting for more information that came on Monday.
How long did that Monday feel to the both of you?
Oh gosh, you can only guess, right? I mean, it felt like a couple of years went by, because again, what were you going to talk about? You're not going to go out have dinner. You're not going to go see friends. Um, you're really not wanting to eat. You just want to be together. And on one hand, you want Monday to come so desperately so you can find out that information. And on the other hand, you don't want it to come. So I talk a lot about Sunday night scaries. I mean, you get through a week, you get through a weekend of relaxation, friendship, community. You get through your spiritual day on Sunday, and then Sunday night comes, and you're thinking about the week ahead, and those Sunday night scaries attack. Because the mind is a powerful tool when it comes to racing towards painting on a blank canvas and making you think of things that maybe you don't want to think about, stress that hasn't come yet. So Sunday night scaries come. That Sunday night, oh boy, it was a long one. I don't think sleep ever came truly to either one of us. But yeah, it felt like a long time. It felt like forever. And your mind was racing between, I want the information, and yet I don't want the information. But regardless of how you treated it, it was going to come either way. So it eventually did come on Monday.
I know for me, when I spoke to a few people who had cancer announcements in their families, they did similar to you. They kept it to themselves at the moment before they decided how they're going to announce it to the world. But I remember one person, they mentioned terrain. I went on the internet and I pulled up every single thing that I could read about cancer. And I'm glad that your nurse said that because they went from the news to paranoia. Right, very quickly to the point where I think they probably believed at one point that you can just look at someone and give someone cancer. Like their mind was racing so much and they became so paranoid because they wanted information, but I think some people forget is that the information will come when it comes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
sometimes you want it so badly that it's like, okay, it's 1 p.m. I haven't heard anything. It's 1:01. I haven't heard anything. It's 1:01 and 30 seconds. I haven't heard anything. Were there times where you and your family became impatient, or maybe you wanted more information than what was being given at that time?
Not really. I mean, I'll tell you the difference was I didn't feel impatient about a lack of information at the time. That first Friday came, the fantastic approach that she sent us towards, which is do not research, do not dive into the rabbit holes, because you don't know what you're looking for. You know, I when you're prompting the internet to tell you stuff, you got to have a prompt that makes some sense. Otherwise, it can go from everywhere from A to Z. And we had no idea what type of cancer. We didn't know what stage she was in. We didn't know really much at all because neither one of us had had much experience with cancer, friends, family, or otherwise. So this was pretty, pretty virgin territory for us. But I wasn't impatient for the information. I became impatient once we had the information. I wanted a plan. I wanted a path. I wanted to control the elements that I could control. And so that's where my impatience came. It wasn't Friday. It wasn't that long weekend together where we were touching and holding each other more than we normally do. It wasn't through those tears. It was when Monday came and we had information. At least we had enough. And then I became impatient. I wanted a plan, a path, a strategy. I wanted a calendar. I wanted all of those things because I wanted to control that for her.
When I hear that, it makes me think of, is that the man in us that
Yeah.
once we get information, right, we want to plan, we want to resolve, okay, I can fix this. Would you
Yeah.
agree that that could be maybe the man in us trying to fix it, resolve it, and get more information?
Absolutely. And so much of when I did write a journal that became a book without a plan, I wrote about exactly what you just said. I wrote about the fact that, you know, once you have the information, and when it came on Monday and it was gut punch number two, it wasn't great news. We still didn't have all the information. There's a type of rare, very aggressive cancer called triple negative breast cancer. And she had, at that point on that Monday, she had tested negative, which is not a good thing. Typically, you want to test negative in medicine. In this case, she had two negative reads and she was waiting on the third. If the third came, she had triple negative breast cancer. Less than 15% of the people, very aggressive, very fast growing. As a man, you hear things like rare, you hear things like fast growing. In her case, we heard something like stage two. And I was like, oh man, it's fight or flight time. It's game on. Um, so for myself, I wanted to be able to take control of a calendar, a path, a medical team, select that. And for my family and my friends, loved ones, certainly for her, I wanted to be that stoic sentry, that person that just stood guard and appeared strong. I wanted to be that when you're on a bumpy plane, it's a lot of turbulence. and it really gets bouncy, people tend to look at the stewardess. They look at the flight attendant. They want to see what their reaction is. And I needed to be the one that showed no reaction. So that's what I think the shift came for me into the caregiving role. It was this idea that I needed to be the strong one. I had to suck back the tears, suck back the emotions, suck down all of the memory and images and feelings I was having, cram them, bury the shovel, until we get to the point where God willing, remission comes. So that was my path. That's what I chose. Right, wrong, and there was definitely some challenges that came because of it.
When you were putting your emotions to side, right, and you're putting them down as you're saying,
Mhm.
how were you able to do that given that it was such an emotional time for everyone involved?
So I didn't at first when we got the second phone call and we had some information to share. Um, I I immediately told my wife as I was holding her, we need to take a breath, and then we need to let our four adult kids know. So it was the hardest phone call ever placed. I texted them; they were all over the world. One was in Spain, one was in California, one was in Oregon, one was in Boise, Idaho, and I had to coordinate a FaceTime call, which I never do. So they knew something was up. And mom had shared with them a bit. Wendy had shared with them a bit of the ordeal that she was going through. So they knew something. They just didn't know what that something was. That was one of the few times my kids have seen me cry so aggressively. And at the end of that call, that's when I made that decision. I went through the call with them. I talked to them all individually. And then after that, I said, it's time to get the shovel and bury all of this. And I did that for 18 months. And I felt that was the right approach. I don't know. I didn't have anything to base it on. I had no experience with it. I just felt like that this process was going to be so emotional for her, for our loved ones, our kids, our friends. Um, and so I thought I needed to at least be the one that didn't bring more emotion into the journey that she was now on. I needed to be the stoic sentry that just held it all in, and hopefully that provided her more strength, more resilience, more willingness to fight the battle that she was now waging.
I look at caregivers in that situation, you in the example you gave, and many caregivers around the world. Many will say that there has to be that one person that takes on that role like you did, where I'm going to cry, but there's a time and place for it because right now my four kids need me
Yeah,
who are traveling the world. Right now, my spouse of 30 plus years needs me,
yeah,
right? It hurts inside. I'm breaking inside. I
yeah,
want to cry every minute of every day, but I need to make sure that things get met.
yeah.
Things are being done. The plan is being created. What do you think your mental health was during those 18 months while you were doing that?
That's the story that I wrote. The answer is I didn't think about it. It wasn't an option at that point, right? I wasn't thinking about myself. Um, I'm a guy that always wants to get to the gym. I'm the guy that has pretty consistent patterns in my life. All of that was gone. I mean, normalcy shifted and it shifted so aggressively. All of our friends, our loved ones, all of our boats were going the same direction. We raised kids together. We cried together. We laughed together. We traveled together. We maybe tipped a few too many glasses of wine together. And then suddenly a storm came and our boat went a different direction. The last thing I wanted to do to my loved ones and friends is pull them with me. They were still worried about where they're going to go for dinner, where they're going to go on vacation, what wedding they were going to go to next. That wasn't an option for us anymore. So I didn't want to pull them over. So I became isolated. Wendy had her pink ribbon brigade. She had her individuals that were so loving and so willing to pay it forward. She could talk to, cry with, learn more about what was coming up next. And I was sitting there in isolation for her, for my kids, for my loved ones. And I stayed that way for 18 months. I didn't know during that process the ramifications of that decision. And it's not something that guys talk about a lot. They don't talk about the collapse, the mental, emotional collapse that you're setting yourself up for by doing that, by holding it all in, by being the strong one, the stoic one. Instead, I just felt the way I was going to get us through, me and her, and the kids, and our loved ones, to get to the other side, I needed to act and react that way. And so I did. And once I made that call to my kids and we cried, I said to myself, those are my last tears until we know what the end's going to look like. Is there going to be remission or not? And once we got through that journey, I didn't cry as much as I thought because I didn't know how to. I just lost so much of who I was during that process of cramming. And there's only so much cramming you can do. You know, it's like a garage storage. Eventually it fills up and it starts to look pretty bad and you got to address it. But that's the journey I chose. I don't know if it's the right one. There's not a lot of research in caregiving that people hand you when you take on that role. You just do the best you can with the knowledge you have.
It's like the caregivers are a little bit of unsung heroes,
Yeah.
right? Because they do go through a lot, and many of them are probably not going to talk about it in a way that makes them seem bigger than life. They're going to be humble, similar to they're going to say, I made a decision because I strongly believe my family needed this from me.
Yeah.
And after we get through it together, because we will get through it as a family, then I can look to repair myself if there is some damage to my mental health, my emotional health.
Yep.
Your wife now has come through this.
She has.
When you speak to her now about it, what are some of the emotions that she shares about her journey as she reflects on it?
So, you know, hers was intense. It was not a calm path forward. She had two types of chemotherapy administered every week for a chunk of time. And then we got this massive vacation where we had two more types of chemotherapy every 2 weeks. So it was nonstop drip and really aggressive drugs. You know, with her type of cancer, they had one shot to get it and one shot only because there was no backup plan. There wasn't a second opportunity if they missed. So they threw the kitchen sink at her, and her for her treatment, survival was the risk because it was so aggressive. And here we got this petite cheerleader from Washington State. Her body had to not only get through that, but be strong enough to get to the next treatment. So we had some long nights. We had some intense days. And she was pretty much out of it for 18 months. She would stare at the ceiling most days, kind of in a fog, and not a sad one, not one that she was feeling sorry for herself. She was just trying to get through it. Her body was just trying to survive it. So when she got through it, and when we got the amazing news that not only did the treatment work, it exceeded the expectations of the physicians. She, here we were battling this together, and then the path diverged. Her path went to, I want to get my strength back, and then I want to become the yes girl. I want to get back into life. I want to say yes to everything. If somebody wants to call me to go have a glass of wine, yes. Go to Cabo San Lucas, yes. Take up golf, you bet. Go for a hike, sure. She became the yes girl, and she was so engaging and so energetic, and she threw herself back into life. And I faked it. Right. I had to catch up. She, I didn't want to get in her way. I don't want to get involved with trying to get her to slow down to let me catch up. I don't want to pull her back. She'd earned every bit of that, yes. And she earned every bit of the life that she was now living. I just couldn't live with her. So I never felt more alone. Because even when we were together, friends, loved ones, trips, wherever we were, I was just going through the emotions of it all, and I was still trying to weigh myself and protect her. So it was a harrowing event afterwards, which should have been celebratory. It should have been so happy and so emotional with respect of just being so pleased that she not only made it, but she was now thriving. She's 4 years clean now. Um, she's got one more where they hit the magic five. And I'm telling you, that woman, the energy she attacks life with, that's her new normal. She's a lot more energetic. She's a lot more willing to try new things. She's a lot more understanding. And it's funny, during treatment, of course, we didn't fight or argue or bicker. What would we fight about? Right. And then afterwards, she's running down this new path. I don't want to get in the way. So I don't know if we've had an argument ever since the gut punch came. But for me, I had to figure this out. I needed to, my normal, whatever it was, I wasn't going to find it again. That was gone. I had to find my new normal just as she had done. And it took me a while to figure that out. I had to get really creative, think of myself for a change, which I hadn't done in a long time. And I needed to sort me out so I could be better for her, better for my friends, better in all my social interactions.
It seems like she went back to being the superhero that she is, and now she just took flight, right? Because
That's right.
she knew how it felt like not being able to run, not being able to fly. I'm talking metaphorically now because of what she was going through.
Yep.
Once she went through it now, she's like, I'm gonna be that yes girl. I'm gonna run. I'm gonna fly. Catch me if you can, in so many words, right?
I love
And
that.
you now, it seems like on the other side, because you got used to not running or
Yep.
protecting. Now, when she's flying and she's running, like, oh, okay, I got to learn how to catch up again, right? It's like two kids that one took the training wheels off and the one still has the training wheel. The ones without the training wheel, he's gone, right? Like, wait up for me. I'm on my way. But you're discovering how to do it all again. What are some of the ways that you're discovering to do it all again and keep up?
So it took me a minute. I mean, I needed to understand why I was confused, why my memory didn't seem right. I just was struggling with things, little things, people's names. Um, you know, Folks would call me up for business opportunities, and they're acting like nothing's happened. And I just, it was a lot of cloudiness, a lot of confusion. There were days I'd be outside, it was beautiful blue skies. I couldn't feel that. And so I looked at different options. I just threw myself into projects. I figured I'll just take care of that. So my yard needed a complete redo. Why not do it myself? Um, we bought a home in McCall, Idaho for the summers. I'm painting the garage. I'm building a flagstone deck. I'm just throwing myself so deep into projects. Figured I could just work my way out of it. Not a chance. There was too much storage that I had pushed down into myself. I had way too much baggage that I was carrying around every day. Just didn't know that. So eventually I found myself in front of a therapist. And that's something I never thought I would do. I talked to a priest, I talked to my friends, and mostly on the surface. But I went to a therapist, and we talked a bit. I went and sat on the couch. I need to sit in a chair because I had to take baby steps. But we talked about, we talked about what I went through, and it didn't take her long to realize, boy, I buried a lot. I was carrying around a ton of excess, unnecessary baggage, and I was just cramming it deeper and deeper and deeper. So we talked about PTSD, because you're in fight or flight that long, and it's not like you can ever turn it off. When she's resting, I'm watching for anything that's showing signs of side effects. And when she's awake, I'm providing her with every tool in my arsenal to make her pain and her stress less. So you're in that for that long of a period. Yeah, you're going to have some PTSD. And in this case, she detected something deeper because of the memory issues. So there's something called dissociative amnesia. I'd never heard of it. I was like, what in God's green earth is that? And can you give me a couple pills and I'll be out of here? And the answer is no. You got to work through it. You got to put in the work. It's like going to a gym. These biceps don't grow themselves. You got to build them. So she gave me three options. She gave me option one: mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, and a way to explore feelings that you're having. And I kind of looked at that and said, I'm kind of a control freak. I don't drink to excess, and I don't do drugs, not because I feel like people do or doing something wrong. I just like to have my body and my mind in control. So I crossed that one off the list. The second one was some type of eye therapy where they take a light and they move it around and your eyes follow the light. Sounded cool. I didn't have to do much, just had to kind of follow the light. I just didn't understand it. She described it three or four times. I read up on it. I still don't understand it. You can tell the way I'm describing it, I don't understand it. So it was so foreign to me, I crossed that one off. The third option was just to unpack, just some nasty spring cleaning. Just go in there and clean it out. And I chose that one. I didn't know what I was going to do, how I was going to do it. I just knew it needed to be done. My daughter that Christmas, which was a year ago, she gave me a journal, and I little nice leather bound journal, and I took that journal on January 1st a year ago, and I started writing on the journal, and I did it every morning from 5 till about 10 or 11 until my hand cramped up. I was writing in that journal, and I was making no sense. There was no strategy. I was just in deep clean mode. And so I unpacked a ton into that journal. And then when the journal filled up, and it was probably May of that year, I thought, what am I going to do with this? And the idea came to write about. It was a passion of mine when I was young. I never took it on, but writing was always a passion. So I wrote about it, and I wrote about the journey, and I wrote about what happened during cancer, but also what happened after cancer. And I wrote about it in a way I hoped would connect with individuals that have gone through it and are confused themselves and are trying to figure out where normal is and how do I find it again. So I wrote that in a very short time. When I went to law school, there was no computers. We had typewriters and whiteout. And so the last thing you wanted to do is use that whiteout. So you learned how to write the first time, so you wouldn't make mistakes. So I did that. I wrote it. And then I had to figure out, okay, now I've got this so-called book, manuscript, memoir, whatever you want to call it. Now what? I had to learn a whole new world for me, which was how to get the thing published.
When you mentioned the typewriter, you brought me back to my intern days as a paralegal. I worked at an immigration law firm, and they had a typewriter.
Yeah.
It's not my generation, obviously, but
Yeah.
I got used to it, and thank God I could type 70 words a minute, so I was pretty good to your point, right?
Yeah.
Because you make a mistake, you make a mistake, and I share that because you begin to realize how much of yourself comes out when you're writing something.
Yeah.
I shared with you earlier that family members of my own had cancer, my mom specifically. I wrote everything in my mind. And when my grandmother died 2 years after that, she's the one that raised me. That's where I put that to paper. So to you, when you mentioned the journal, I could relate because that's exactly what I did. And in the beginning, I was speaking to like a mentor of mine, and when they mentioned psychedelics, I give them the same answer. I was like, I'm in total control
Yeah.
because when it comes to the four pillars of health, mental health, spiritual health, physical health, and emotional health, I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
right. Like you,
Yeah.
you put me on something where I think I don't have control of my mind. I don't know what I'm going to be doing or thinking with myself.
That's right.
But unpacking was such a beautiful thing, and then that put me back into my coach hat because that's what I would tell people. I was like, just unpack it
Yeah.
however it is you want to do, right? Like journaling, it could be shout it out. I remember going into a corner and I just cried. I was like, I'm going to cry it all out today.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I cried it out and I cried it out. To me, it probably felt like years of crying,
Yeah.
right? Like you
Yeah.
mentioned on the Sundays, right? But
Yeah.
when I got back up and I wiped my tears and I looked at my watch, I was like, oh, that was only 10 minutes. But it was a beautiful 10 minutes. You mentioned you wrote about going through that journey and afterwards. When
Yeah.
you look back, how did both what was different about both points of that journey to you?
The journey itself with cancer, with treatment, with side effects, and she had some wicked ones. And if there was a side effect, it was going to find her. If you heard of a side effect, she had it. So it was intense. Um, but you're so deep into it, you don't think about anything else. All you think about is, can we get to the next treatment? Can we get to the next treatment? Each time you walk in, and we were blessed to have had our treatments at Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, and they had what we called it a green light, red light. So she'd get her blood drawn, and we'd run to a coffee shop, and we'd hold our breath and hope that the green light came. Because if it was a red light, that delayed treatment, that delayed everything. So she got 15 of 16 green lights. And that one time she didn't, she had to have a blood transfusion. It was intense. Um, but you're so into it. You're so into that moment that you don't think about it. You just stay on path, stay on track, communicate with your health providers, and do everything you can to help lift her to the next treatment. It was the after part that was hard. I mean, honestly, the during was brutal in the sense of we're experiencing things we never thought we'd experience. She's passing out and scaring the hell out of me, thinking that maybe she's not coming back. So we were having those moments, and it was intense and it was brutal. But the confusion that came afterwards was worse because now she's in this celebratory, happy, I'm all in on life mode. And I wanted to be next to her and be with her so much. So that was the hard part. And when I wrote this, I at that point, when I got through the pieces and parts where we got through our journey of cancer and cancer treatment, it was that part from that moment forward when I was writing that, I was trying to write towards everyone else. I was trying to lay it out in a way that was raw, and it was difficult to read. Um, and it was everything I'm not. I spent so much time in my career not being the one that wanted the spotlight, not being the one that wanted the light shining on me. I'm always deflecting credit elsewhere. Um, when I wrote this, I'm thinking, man, I've got to communicate. I've got to find a way to communicate to these individuals because I was one of them, and it was brutal. I didn't know what was going on with me. Was I suicidal? No, but I was in the same zip code for sure because I was so confused. I was just so distraught in the sense that why can't I lift myself back up to be next to her? Man, she went through this brutal cancer. I just helped her through it. So why am I struggling so much now? And so I think that's when I realized I was going from telling a story of our journey to telling a story of to speaking to caregivers to create a conversation, awareness, attention, light a fire around a conversation so they know they're not alone. This happens. When you're in the fight that long, you're going to have some trauma. And now you got to figure out a way to get back. So I think that was the real challenge for me when I got through the journaling and I did all the unpacking. Now I'm like, oh, now I got to get back to a normal, not the normal I had. I got to get back to a normal. And so that part of the story, I hope resonates with people and makes them recognize they're not alone. They've got the resilience to get there, obviously, because they had the resilience to get through the first part. So, like you said, I mean, do the work, do the unpacking. I mean, if you want to choose the psychedelic element, do it, own it, right? Buy into it. If you want to try the light therapy and you understand it better than I do, God bless, jump in, both feet, go deep. But if you want to unpack, there's work, so roll up the sleeves and find a way to get it out. And then you can start building back your foundational elements to find your new normal. For me, the new normal includes a book. Never thought I would write about this. My wife still hasn't read it. In fact, a funny story, I sent this off to literary agents I found on the internet, one of which went through breast cancer herself. It really hit her hard. She wanted to sign me up. I sent it to two publishers, one of which, the guy that read it, he was a caregiver for his wife. Had no idea of either one of those individuals when I sent the memoir off. And I chose just to go to the publisher. He and I connected. So I did that and got through this process. When we got to the editing element, after we signed the contract and we got through the editing, the editor's like asking me these questions, and I'm like, I'm scratching my head thinking about it. It didn't take her long to realize I hadn't read it yet. I wrote it, I sent it off. I didn't read a word. So I finally did. I finally through the editing process. I read it 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, man, that was brutal. And thank God, if I can get this into the hands of individuals that are struggling, I hope it helps, because that's my way of paying it forward.
That would be a beautiful way to pay it forward because it could be someone's guide to handling the situation. Because, like you, like me, like so many others, when this situation comes up, many of us, this is our first time coming face to face with it because online or on TV, most people I speak to, maybe Paul, you've experienced as well, to them, cancer is it.
Yeah.
You have it and there's no coming back, right?
Yep.
But we're proof in our families that no, you can beat this.
Yep.
And for your book, for your story to be an example of this is what it may look like. This is what you may go through. But the beautiful thing is when they pick up that book is that they won't feel alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it could be a lonely journey. Right? What are your thoughts on that?
You're hitting it around across the plate. I mean, it's that isolation. It's a forced isolation when you're going through the treatments. It's not like you're going to have people around you. In fact, you really can't, because her white cells are so low. You can't risk exposure. So isolation happens. And then you're so tired, the last thing you want to do is text and communicate with friends. I nominated one of our close friends to be the hub and spoke for me. I would communicate with her and she'd push out the information to everyone else. I didn't have the energy. So that was forced isolation. By the way, we led into this experience with isolation because of the COVID lockdowns. So we had that coming in. Now we have our own forced isolation coming out of it. She's back in the world. She's saying yes to everything. I was isolated again. And that was self-inflicted for sure, but I just didn't know how to re-enter relationships, society, conversations, social settings with all the confusion I was feeling. So it was easier for me just to step back and remain isolated. That was my comfort at the time. So yeah, I think from that perspective of, is this going to provide them some information to understand they're not alone? They're not going through something that someone else hasn't experienced, and there's a pathway out. I think that would be an amazing step towards them finding a path, and the path is going to be different. When we were designing the cover of the book, I wanted them to have a cave with lots of turns and twists. I didn't want a straight line, because that's what it feels like, and turning left or turning right, there's no right answer or wrong answer. It's just not going to get you where you were, and you have to be comfortable with that. For me, all that resiliency that we had to build up during the treatment, I used that same resilience to get through what I was going through. And I didn't come out the other side and start a new business and jump back into entrepreneurialism, all of that. I mean, today, I wrote a book. Now I've got to create some social media, which I never did, never tried to do. I've got to be on podcasts. I've got to do some things that put me out of my comfort zone, which I never would have prior to. A friend of mine who's a college football Hall of Fame coach, and he said, Paul, get up in the morning and just eat a frog. Just grab a fork and knife and eat a frog, and do the thing that you want to do the least. Do the thing you typically kick the can down the curb. You avoid it. Just grab onto it and deal with it first thing in the morning, because then the rest of the day looks so much brighter. And he's right. So that's what I'm doing right now. And then I also decided to teach a law school course. So again, something that I never would have done prior to, but my new normal isn't my old normal. It's truly a new normal. And I think once you get there, you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. So you take that resiliency that you created and you relied on to get through the treatments, and that brings you to what this new normal looks like.
Sounds like Paul is becoming the superhero that's running and flying in his own way now.
That's right. That's right. So if she's the yes girl, I can be the yes man. I can go right alongside her. And,
There
and
you go.
it's okay if our paths continue to go different directions. If she's really into art and she's really into traveling, and I'm into teaching kids a better way to be a lawyer, who knows? But at the end of the day, we come back together and we're together still. And that's the beautiful part.
Yes, superhero families will always save the world, maybe in separate ways, but then they come back together and save each other. And if I can ask you one last question, Paul, before I let you go, I want to give you three wishes, and I want you to wish for three things that you want people to know about this question. So, what are three things you wish people knew about the importance of a caregiver after assisting someone, and why?
I think the important thing that people could understand, who have not gone through it, because just like the Pink Ribbon Brigade that have been down the cancer journey before, and they want to rally around the poor souls that are now part of their sorority and pay it forward. For the folks that don't understand it, just understand how to communicate with caregivers. Understand that they're in the middle of something that they didn't understand themselves, didn't have a manual to follow. So be empathetic, be supportive, but don't ask questions with a question mark. And I say that because all you're going to get back is a quick answer. How you doing? Fine. How's Wendy? Good. Right. Understand how to communicate with them. And if you can understand better how to communicate with them, and you don't ask them about things that don't matter anymore. Your calendar just blows up. Business, really, I care about business right now. I care about keeping my life alive. I care about getting the next treatment. So don't call me up and say, hey, I'm thinking about Wendy. Oh, hey, by the way, what do you think the price should be on this coffee product? Well, I don't care. I may answer it, and I may be proven wrong later because I wasn't thinking clearly. But just by asking that question tells me you haven't at least spent enough time with a caregiver to know, give them some space, give them some love and support. Don't ask questions with a question mark. And sometimes just be